Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Guess what? Another SWI, and I'll be honest, the rest of this year is going to be jam-packed with so many videos, and that's why I've been doing 3 days. I'm probably going to tone it down at some point, but I'm just on a roll. I have energy, and I figured, you know what? I still have all these phone videos that I have to make. I have all these new updated late 2019 reviews as well, so it's either now or never, so I figured I might as well pop them out. But the Google Pixel 4 just came out, as well as the 4 XL, and Google was so nice and kind enough to send one out to me, and I was so happy, so obliged, so humbled. But when I got it, I'm like, you know what? It's good and all, but they could have done better. And, if you want to get my opinions on those, you can go back to the channel, watch those ones. But we're going to be taking a look at a phone that came out a couple of years ago, came out in 2017, and was pretty much the predecessor to the Google Pixel 4 and the 4 XL. And this phone is actually the Google Pixel 2. This is not the XL version. This is the standard Pixel 2, the smaller variant. If you want to watch a 2019 review of that 2 XL, I've already done one. You can go back on the channel or even just type in Google Pixel 2 XL in 2019. My video is probably the first one. So the Google Pixel 2 came out at a time where, I'll be honest, in 2017 even, phones were starting to become a little bit bezel-less. They were starting to remove their bezels and everything. With the Galaxy S8 early 2017, we saw that kind of start that trend in my opinion. Then with the iPhone 10 in September of 2017, that really took the initiative and, just put a notch on it with almost bezel-less design everywhere else. The Pixel 2, however, I don't know what they were thinking. Even with the Pixel 3, they took that same approach. But the Pixel 2, the smaller variant, they kept those same thick bezels on the front that they did. I think even these were thicker than the original Pixels, to be honest. And it's so crazy that they did this. I mean, they could have done like 40 different ways going about it, but regardless, I guess this is the way they approached it. Now, looking at the front, you'll be able to see that we have a 5-inch AMOLED display on the front. Now, it is 1080p with 441 pixels per inch. Now, what does that all mean right now? That means that, in my opinion, it's still a pretty decent display. I think it still kind of holds up for the most part. I mean, yes, if you compare it to like the Quad HD displays that we have now, including like the dynamic AMOLED and the 90 Hz refresh rates that we have now, even with the Pixel 4, yes, it doesn't really compare, but I think overall it's still a pretty decent panel. When you're looking at it from the side, when your angles are good, the darks are pitch black, and what I can tell you is, if it wasn't for that complete bezel on the top and bottom, I think this phone would kind of give the impression that it has a better panel than it does. With now, you can have probably like even a 720p panel, but if it's on like a bezel-less design, then it looks really good. I'll give you an example with the OnePlus 6T, I believe that one doesn't really have too much bezel on it, but that one is a 1080p panel. For my part, and when I was looking at it, I'm like, dude, it's not that bad of a panel. With this one, it's a little bit kind of the same thing, but it just has so much bezel on it. Regardless, it's not that big of a deal. We have front-facing speakers on the front, which is super nice, so I guess that bezel does have some, reasoning behind it. On the bottom, we have a single USB Type-C port, which is awesome, but really no headphone jack anywhere else, which was funny, and Google got clowned on a lot because the year before with the Pixel, the original one, they were saying, oh, our phone still has headphone jacks, this and that, and they removed it with the next variant, which was so weird. On the back of the phone, we have a fingerprint sensor, which is super nice. I like that a lot. Glass on the top, single camera sensor, and I'll hit on the camera very briefly. I might make a separate video talking about this camera and how it still holds up in 2019. I might drop that on the second channel, but most probably I'll just wait until next year, a couple months to do that one. But ultimately, what I can tell you, the design of this phone and the feeling of this phone, in my opinion, is probably one of the biggest cons of this phone. I don't think it feels very premium, especially in today's standards. The Pixel 4, which, isn't even that premium feeling compared to what we have, feels kind of a little bit more premium than this one. Really, the only premium feeling thing about this is maybe like the screen part, but in really every other aspect of this, it just does not feel like that premium mode device, in my opinion. Now, again, I want to preface that by saying it's my opinion. I'm not always right, but I've owned the Pixel 2s, I've owned every Pixel, and right now it doesn't feel too premium in my sense, but this thing does have IP67 dust and water resistance, which is nice, so you have that going for it. Now, moving on to the software, this is probably one of the biggest advantages, and even one of the reasons why this phone is still completely relevant. This thing was released with Android Oreo. It is getting Android 10, it already has Android 10 on it. I'm pretty sure it's going to get Android 11 because the original Google Pixel got Android 10, so this one realistically should go an extra version on top of that. But the coolest thing about this phone is that there's so much of a development community behind this. The original Pixel, this Pixel, all Pixels. I'm telling you right now, this phone is going to last for a while. It's definitely not going to stop anytime soon, regardless if it, it stops at Android 10 or if it keeps going. It's going to get third-party support for a long time. So natively on stock Android, from Google's support from their stock supporter, it's probably going to stop at Android 11, but realistically, it's probably going to go a little bit further and third-party support in my opinion. So that pretty much covers it up in terms of the software aspect. Now moving on to the performance side of things, this thing did come with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 540 GPU. Now there were two variants of the Google Pixel 2. There was the 64GB variant and the 128GB variant. Both those variants had 4GB of RAM. Now the funny thing is that with the Pixel 3, they kept that same amount of RAM storage and the storage variants, but even worse, the Pixel 4 kept those same storage variants. They increased the RAM, but they just kept the same storage variants, which is insane. There's no expandable storage on it. This is more so with the Pixel 4. When the Pixel 2 came out, this was 2017. I don't think a lot of people, of course they would have preferred expandable storage and more storage variants, but I don't think at that time a lot of people were complaining about it. It's way more of an issue now because, file sizes are getting bigger, app updates are getting bigger, even though Apple and all these people have said they're going to get smaller. Phones are only going to be needing more and more power and more storage to suffice that power. And what I can tell you is the storage variants, as of right now, it's not that big of a deal in 2017, but now it's probably, you might want to get a phone that has a little bit more storage than 28GB, especially when you consider the fact you can film 4K videos and all those different things. So that pretty much covers up that aspect. But talking about the actual performance of it, what I can tell you is it's not a bad performing device at all. I actually really like the performance of this thing. Now, one thing this thing has going for it is the stock Android. This thing, doesn't really require too much power to push through it. It doesn't have a lot of background processors going for it, which is awesome. When I'm using this phone, it feels like a very smooth feeling device, and I attribute that a lot to stock Android. Stock Android is my second favorite software. Oxygen OS is my favorite one, but that's based off Android, so it doesn't matter. But when I'm going through things, light apps and, opening the browser and going through one thing to the other, messaging, whatever, it's going to be perfectly fine. You're probably not going to feel it being too slow. One cool thing is with Android 10, it does bring those gestures, so it kind of smoothens out that whole entire experience and UI in my opinion. So that kind of adds to the whole entire premiumness and kind of overall power of this phone. Even though it's kind of a minor thing, it might seem like it's a software thing, but it definitely makes the phone feel much smoother when you're going through things. When you kind of step it up a notch and go to the more higher intensive apps and games, you're probably not going to notice that big of a difference if you're not comparing them side by side to the Pixel 4 or the iPhone 11s or whatever the case is. When I'm using this phone, it still basically feels like a very good device. Gaming is also very good. Real Racing 3 ran pretty good. Temple Run, obviously, very minor game, but it runs fine. Pew Pew, all those games will run perfectly good. If you're a huge gamer, this is not a gaming phone, but it can still get you through, point A to point B. I would recommend maybe if you want to go for the more gaming route, you can go for like the Galaxy Notes or something like that, and there's probably way other phones that I'm even missing out, but the Google Pixel kind of gives it a good blend with software and performance. It's not the best performing device. Even in 2017, it wasn't the best performing then, but for an all-around package, when you factor in the software and power, they kind of make a good mix in my opinion. So that's my take on it. That's my opinion on the power side of things. Now moving on to the camera sensor. As you guys know, the Google Pixel line is known for their cameras. Google takes the initiative to kind of push that camera to the max that it can go. Now with the Pixel 4, I hate bringing up the Pixel 4 every time, but I have to keep doing it. That was a very good camera. Pixel 2, more of the same. It's still a very, very good camera. I would say in terms of stock Android, it's kind of missing out on some features that the Samsung Galaxies and those phones kind of bring, but this one still has a lot going for it too. Now on the back, you have a single 12.2 megapixel camera. It has optical image stabilization as expected. You are able to shoot 4K videos on it, only up to 30 frames per second. The good news is the Pixel 4 can only do the same thing, 4K 30 frames, so you're not really missing out on much if you upgrade, or if you don't upgrade for that matter. And the camera sensor is still very, very good. I'm not a photographer, like I've stated. I might next year taking more practice into the camera side of things because a lot of people want to hear about it. I'm just not into it that much. But I can tell you this camera is going to definitely suffice you. It's a very good sensor at the end of the day. I don't think you're going to be complaining about it. The front camera is 8 megapixels, and again, I don't really use the front camera that much like I stated, but ultimately what I can tell you is both the front camera and the back camera, very, very good. Very, very good. I've loved for this camera a lot. Again, the software is probably one of the best things about it, but it's kind of lacking in software features in my opinion. But that pretty much covers up the camera side of things. Now I want to hit on the battery life. This thing has a 2700 mAh battery. That's probably, in my opinion, one of the worst things about this phone. The main reason being is not removable, which is already expected, but it's kind of a smaller size, and it's only getting worse and worse by the day. If you're getting this phone used, it's probably not going to be at that full 2700. It's probably going to be at like 2500, 2300, whatever the case is. Batteries depreciate over time. All batteries, it's not just Google Pixel phones. So what I can tell you is battery life is definitely not one of the best things about this phone. I wouldn't necessarily brag about it. I wouldn't be too crazy about it. It does have a USB Type-C port, which is, I guess, cool. But as far as I know and as far as I tested, battery life is not brag-worthy on this phone at all, in my opinion. So that pretty much covers up everything I wanted to hit on. Now, ultimately, even though this phone has a kind of some quirky things here, it has a lot of bezel on it, it doesn't feel like the most premium phone, only a single camera sensor on the back, and the battery life is kind of average. I still would probably recommend this phone to a lot of people. I think this phone is still a very, very tremendous phone. I'm going to start recommending this phone actually the same way I recommend Galaxy S8s or S9s or even iPhone 10s. This phone, for the price that it's being sold for, it's really hard to beat. I've seen these things go for like $100, less than $200, man, which is really, really insane. And I think that's on Amazon prices too. So for a phone that's still getting software support, that has a huge development community behind it, that's on stock Android and power is still good. Battery life might not be the best, but it's still a very good performing device for the price and everything. I think it's really hard to find a competitor for this specific phone, especially when you consider 2017 flagship phone from Google. In the later part of 2019 going into 2020, the price is definitely depreciated a lot. So if you want to pick one up, I would highly recommend it. I'll find the cheapest one on Amazon and I'll link it down straight in the description below so you guys can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it. But more importantly than everything, I also love every single of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.